So basically, I'm going to play a bunch of MSX games for about 30 minutes-ish. I say 30 minutes, that was a loose cutoff. As you'll see, I don't necessarily stick to it the whole time. Now, of course, I acquired all these games 100% legitimately. In fact, we'll find a few copies of the games just over here.
The Adventures of Randar III. You know, I actually really liked this one. I played over 90 minutes and I didn't really want to stop playing. This is one from Compile, showing off their trademark epic cutscenes. I was super impressed by the intro, the lighting and everything. Really shows off what the MSX is capable of. I guess if you see about 30 seconds of the game, you can more or less figure out if you'll like it yourself. It's kind of like a Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy type game. However, being from 1990, it had some features I found quite noteworthy. For example, random encounters are denoted by these little ghosts that are walking around, I guess floating around. This means one of two things. You can avoid random encounters for the most part if you have the skill. Also, you can grind completely AFK, well apart from combat itself. Just let them run into you, and then just do the battle, you know, and then wait until the next battle comes along. They basically hone in on the player and spawn in every couple seconds. So the game's pretty much written entirely in kana, which is a kind of a trade-off. It can make the meaning of some words somewhat ambiguous. But if you're a learner like myself, it's kind of easier to read. You don't need to know 1,000 million kanji, you just kind of have to be aware of the words existing, if that makes sense. So we're sent by our dad to slay the mighty Orc King, and you do so. But you actually find that his cave is no longer filled with monsters. Well, you did the thing, you killed the big bad, congratulations, you win, no monsters. A more efficient person would probably go and grab all the chests, but I couldn't be bothered. I just left the cave. So from what I could gather from the story, after our dad sends us into the mines, hoping we perish and he can stop worrying about paying child support, cost of living, you know, he decides to power us off on the nearest king and call it a day. We're told by the king fella to grab 5 magic gems. This is an early 90s RPG. And find out what the meaning of this magic card or something or other is. To this end, we meet Phileas, who takes us to some dudes where we found him getting murked by a large bird. Literally a bird. We also steal his topaz. So we grind, move on through the world, and save a random lady from some boys beating them up. We meet Sophia, the mage, and for some reason none of her abilities seem to work. This message pops up so quickly, even on the slowest message speed. I just accept it. It is what it is. Our spellcasters are mute. My initial idea was that the MSX was a system, like a Commodore 64 or ZX Spectrum, but actually it was kind of more like a unified standard or architecture.
Now, if you don't know what an architecture is, neither do I.
But suffice to say, it's kind of a similar situation to the 3DO, where the ASCII Corporation had this specification for making systems, and then a bunch of different manufacturers threw their hat in the ring and spewed out a bunch of different systems, which are all MSXs, essentially. So the first MSX that was actually launched would have been the Mitsubishi ML8000 in October of 1983. This is around the same time that the Famicom released in Japan. It came out in July, so just a couple months before. Arcus. I found Randar III to be somewhat accessible, but the MSX was also home to more obtuse, hardcore games for the most daring adventurers. I really liked this one on paper. I really like first-person dungeon crawlers, and Arcus seemed like it was going to be a bit of a treat. Firstly, we're bombarded with massive walls of text with a tiny font. What were they thinking? These kanji are basically illegible. This one looks like the Among Us dude, or maybe E.T. for the Atari, you know, something like that. Maybe for native Japanese it's readable, but for me, no chance, mate. As a result, I don't necessarily know what's going on in the story, but I did haggle with a shopkeeper, and there seems to be some kind of hidden disposition system, wherein the prices drop by 1 gold each time I buy, for example, a potion. Or, if I try to haggle with him unsuccessfully, he increases the price seemingly permanently. Damn, bro. who actually remembers the deals you make and treats you accordingly, which is super dope for a game of this age. Todd Howard, take notes. So we head into the dungeon, caring not for the yappers and the walls of text. We get lost. There are more fake walls than real walls. We get twacked by goblins, and then by orcs, and then by bats, and then by goblins. Seriously, these goblins, bro. They come in groups of 3. They're hitting 30, 33, 34. We have 200 HP. There's 3 of them. Every turn, boom, 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 boom. I'm really not sure what I'm supposed to do. Usually, my strategy in these games is to grind, just minute 1, start grinding, before even trying to explore the dungeon. But in Arcus, I had 30 minutes and I couldn't even get the ball rolling. After fights, there's not really like an indication that you get gold or XP, but I periodically checked up on my gold and it was increasing, so I only assume I would be getting XP as well. So here's my gameplay loop for 30 minutes of Arcus. We go to the dungeon. We insert disc 3, we fight until we get wiped, we insert disc 2, we get yapped at for 5 minutes straight, the same thing every time by the way. We insert disc 3, we go back into the dungeon, we fight, we insert disc 2, we get yapped at, we insert disc 3.
I did not gain any levels, nor party members, nor equipment, and that was Arcus. Overall, I guess 30 minutes isn't really enough time to get acquainted with this game, but for what it's worth, I did quite enjoy it.
Indeed, 30 minutes can be somewhat rapid. Do you get it? You might be familiar with chess. You might be familiar with Fire Emblem. You might be familiar with 1001 mindless button-bashing head-to-head fighters. So, what happens when you mix all that together with a cutesy crayon art style? Akanbe Dragon. So you start a game, and you have a couple quote-unquote chess pieces to play with. The king, the dragon, a bishop, a rook, okay, and there's even pawns? Well, we're not really supposed to show that on YouTube, so let's blur that out. Each of the pieces actually has unique stats, you know, jump, strength, and so on. And they also have a unique shot or attack. So naturally, this leads to certain pieces countering certain others. I found a safe spot in this one fight. It took like 10 minutes to kill him because I do 1 damage per hit. It was ridiculous. I don't know how you're supposed to do this legit without cheesing it, actually. This game was something a bit different. I'm not going to be putting in the hours myself, but it's quite a unique experience, if not a little rough around the edges. Mugen Senshi Valis. And we go from the rough to the bunker. This game ruined my night. For starters, the green enemies on the green background. Fantastic game design, wonderful. The game runs 500 miles an hour, and unless you directly wire your floppy into the floppy disk drive, you don't have a chance of reacting to anything. Despite the Japanese street aesthetic, this game plays more like London Simulator, with the protagonist getting chain murked by 10 men at once. I wasn't too sure what to do. There's like an arrow in the corner and some kind of allusion to there being 5 phantasm crystals to collect. Maybe that ends the level? Maybe it ends the game? Not that I'd know, because I couldn't find a single one, much less get off the first few screens. At one point I had this beam power up and I found another one titled HB? Homing Beam? Hardly bearable? Horrendously bastardized game?
Homeboy.
So after my time was up, I checked out a long play, and you can actually farm total health at the start from the enemies. You see it says like level 1, level 3 in the corner here. Well, the level is how many bars of HP you have, right? So the enemies drop these little flashing orbs which give HP, and presumably there's no cap. I don't know, I'm not going to sit here all day and find out. So the long play farms to about level 120, i.e. 120 bars of health, and tanks the whole game. You don't have to worry about anything. I suppose this is an oversight on my end, not knowing that during my playthrough, but I don't necessarily think this absolves the game. But on the upside, Valis does have 2 swing animations, a left and a right. Same with crouching. Cool. Cap off with another positive, I will say that Mugen Senshi Valis has a very vibrant and appealing colour palette, for better or for worse. So when we talk about the MSX, what we're really talking about is a wide range of different computers, almost a generation of computing in Japan. We had more handheld models. We had models that would assure you'd become obsessed with music.
一方下の子は音楽に夢中
We had models that focused on particular hardware like cassette decks, printers, things of that nature. Models that were specialized in word processing or music making, as we outlined earlier, gaming. And I found that most of the marketing and advertisement was actually targeted towards adults, sometimes presenting itself as an escape from the kids and stuff like that, which is just interesting. When I think of video game advertising from the early 80s, I usually associate it with being targeted towards children, but in this case, not so true. The Black Onyx. But the question is, how much more black could it be? The Black Onyx is one of those mythical granddad RPGs that existed in the no man's land before Dragon Quest, before Final Fantasy. Not before Wizardry, not before Ultima, not before Rogue, Temple of Apshai. There were tons of RPGs already defining the genre, but among online discourse, this one particularly stands out, I suppose. First I tried the game and the text was fucked. It looked like someone tried to do a translation patch, but misplaced the data, to put it nicely. I made my party and then, for the most part, couldn't do anything after then, you know. If it was in Japanese, I'd probably have a better chance of reading it than complete gibberish, but who knows. So I went and downloaded the English translation by Polaris, big shout out, thank you bro. I had a bit of a better time with it. I created a party of adventurers, the great Berg, Tyzak, Fern, Al, and Noob. I basically kind of wandered aimlessly for a bit. You can talk to enemies and recruit them before fighting, which I guess this is before Megami Tensei. It reminds me of that game, but maybe this game invented it, I'm not really sure. I managed to recruit a beast. He had chain armor, he had a mace, he was leagues ahead of my party. And then I fell into a hole, and I got destroyed by skeletons, although the Chad took 0 damage. If I were going to play the game again, I'd probably just make one character and kind of farm recruiting humans until I had a full party of Giga Chads. And moreover, you can pool gold together from other party members, like in Might and Magic, some kind of game like that, or Wizardry, actually. So I would probably do the following. Roam the surface for 20 to 30 minutes, you know. Identify the most geared Giga Chads out of everybody. Recruit 4 Giga Chads. And then pool all their gold into the one solitary party member and then get them a fresh loadout. And just have 5 Giga Chads from the start of the game. That's probably how I'd do it on a second run. Not too bad. It's quite a primitive game, but what do you expect for 1984? Chuuka Taisen. Well, that one was a bit dry. How about something a little more out there? This game makes me want ramen. A contender for one of the first cuter mobs, don't quote me on that. Chuuka Taisen is a game where you're some kid on a cloud, you mash the spacebar all over various Japanese folklore, food-inspired baddies. I was stuck fighting Daijin for a little bit, but after a few attempts I managed to beat Daijin. He dropped this door, which leads to a shop. You can buy different weapons, kind of like in Cotton, although I couldn't afford any. I guess they use points, I'm not too sure. Advancing for a bit, we find this adorable cannon-toting pig. We fight another Daijin. I guess he has a brother? And I basically sucked ass at this game, and my 30 minutes was over. I quite liked the art style, but I did find some issues with the game as far as my own taste in shooters, if you will. It's not game-breaking, but the character's hitbox is giant. I like a good shmup, but I generally find that if your character's too large to squeeze through the bullets, the game's kind of cooked, but that's just my opinion. Part of me wants to say the game's not that hard in the genre, but I got filtered by the first stage. I'm remiss to not see any of the other levels. The MSX had tons of shooters, but I can't help but feel it wasn't necessarily made for them. The scrolling here is very stuttering, there's some pretty bad sprite flicker, the frame rate is inconsistent, and I'm not really convinced as to why so many developers decided to put shooters on the thing. Aleste Gaiden. But maybe a different game will change my mind. This is another compiled joint, kind of a spin-off, side story entry into the Aleste series. It was released between Aleste 1 and 2, and you play as this epic cyber samurai dude and you blast tons of random mooks and kill bosses and such. In a fairly unique twist for the shmup genre, In Aleste Gaiden, you can jump, like to avoid ground obstacles, death pits, enemies on occasion. It kind of messed with my head at first. I felt like there was a lot to keep track of, you know, you're watching these bullets, you're watching where your guy's at, you're watching the floor. It's a bit of a mess at first. But when I got into it, I was having a great time, man. It runs tons better, it runs so nice. At least as far as I got in the game. I'm sure there's some slowdown later on. The game did jitter at exactly one point in the 30 minutes though. It just seems to run more smoothly than something like Chuuka Taisen, and I guess that's part of the reason why it kept me more engaged. A bit of advice, if you do choose to play this game, avoid the red power-up, bro. Maybe the pros love it, maybe the speedrunners love it, but I found it totally useless and a reset, essentially, when I got it. Maybe it's good when it's upgraded. I didn't find out, I don't want to find out, bro. I did beat the first stage, I was making pretty good progress, hit a checkpoint in the second stage, but I AFK'd too long and on the continue screen and it lapsed. A few more runs of level 1 and there's the 30-minute mark, somewhat unsatisfying, but it was my own fault. King's Valley 2. From unsatisfying to satisfying, and frustrating. From Konami, this one's an Egyptian-themed puzzle platformer. I would call it an order of operations puzzle game, because you can screw yourself over completely by just drilling one wall out of order. I soft-locked a couple times in my 30 minutes. Order of operations. Skill issue. It will force a reset, which means you don't get a password, don't get your extra lives. It sucks. Try to avoid it, but it'll probably happen. So you're exploring this Egyptian tomb, I suppose, which translates to going around these side-scrolling, screen-wrapping levels. They require you to break walls, floors, avoid mummies, and collect these kind of soul orb things to open the way to the next level. I liked this one. I couldn't quite crack level 3. Apparently I'm lower IQ than I actually thought. This yellow mummy climbs the ladders, right? This is new in level 3. And he has a pretty nasty tendency to just ambush you from off screen. I would trap myself in this little safe spot that he couldn't get into, but well, if he stood right outside, what's the use, you know? So all I had to do was get to the door and finish the level, and there he is. It was actually super fun. Engaging on the brain jiggly meat, it has a nice aesthetic, the soundtrack was thematic and catchy. Good game. Daisenryaku 2. 30 minutes is nowhere near enough to get even a glimpse of the first draft of an impression of this game. Well, my absolute first impression is these impressive digitized photographs. There's some military dudes, a lot of planes, they look great for the hardware, to be honest. So, imagine Advance Wars mixed with Civilization's scale, and you have Daisenryaku 2. The computer player takes forever to take their turn. And in addition to that, every time you move, the game reloads the whole map so it can ghost out the areas that are out of range. It looks awesome, to be honest, but it's very slow. It's a slow game. I saw exactly one attack in my 40 minutes with Daisenryaku 2. I took 4 turns in that time, just to give you an idea of how long this game actually is. After the fighting cutscene with the battleships, the entire game's graphics just died. Quite a shame. I was fascinated by this one, and I was willing to spend more time, but this issue caused me to end our time after 40 minutes. If I place myself into the context of Daisenryaku 2, you know, I'm myself as I am, but I happen to be in 1992 Japan, I guess, I would obsess timelessly over this game. Weeks, months, disappearing into the void of gaming bliss, immersing myself in these long campaigns, these epic scenarios. This series is actually still going, with Daisenryaku Supreme Strategic Battles releasing in 2022. Alas, we live in a timeline with Mount & Blade Warband, which scratches the same brain itch for me, so unfortunately, this game's epicness serves as more of a barrier to appreciating and enjoying it for what it is.
So in Daisenryaku, we have a sandbox game with limitless potential, so many different scenarios, hours per playthrough, and emergent storytelling opportunities up the wazoo. And that brings us to our next game.
Princess Maker 2 is one of my favourite games ever. I've never played the original until now. Princess Maker is a, quote, daughter-raising simulator where you play some anonymous dude and raise a daughter. Kind of. I mean, she has to earn her own keep from day one, working part-time jobs in order to fund her own studies. Apparently, so-called dad just sits at home watching the medieval equivalent of a particular website in a dark room, wallowing away the days in his own sorrow, waiting for the hours to pass and for fate to play out its course. What does he actually do all day? Appearing only once a month in order to dictate the daughter's entire month to her, from which she may not deviate, despite any level of stress, ill health, foul mood, malodorous male monsters, and encounters with kidnappers which may befall her. Parent of the Year. Princess Maker is a game where you use your monthly opportunity to talk to your cherished daughter, to religiously chastise her so your morality score doesn't get too low. Princess Maker is a game where you make bars go up so that other bars go down, and to get the other bars back up, you watch other bars go up. If that kind of dopamine loop appeals to you, then you'll most likely get a kick out of it. It's all in good fun. Princess Maker's mostly a wholesome experience, and you aren't getting blood spattered by wild wolves, and it's wholesome in concept, but this game and Princess Maker 2 are both surprisingly edgy at times. I learned a lot this time through the game. My first time, morality is way more important than in 2, because if her morality is too low, your deadbeat daughter will refuse to do any work and poor dad will be left penniless. I like to imagine the anonymous father figure reclined on the couch, one hand in a bag of Doritos, other holding a can of Stella, puffing a fat cigar while his daughter's out scribing for 30 days straight to pay rent. In general, this game's all about raising stats, keeping stress and fatigue low, morality high, making money, attending classes, you get to compete in a fashion show and a tournament. There's an overworld with loot, random battles, you can fraternise with nobles and raise your social standing, that kind of stuff. Depending on how your princess lives her life, you'll get one of various endings, differing degrees of goodness, each showing how the girl's adult life turns out, in short. Sadly, this playthrough did not survive to see an ending. I played for about an hour 40, and it crashed. I didn't save the whole time. Great. Awesome game.
So that pretty much wraps it up. The MSX, home to a variety of different titles, all different genres, of course, and different styles. This is just the beginning, my friends. If you're salty that your favourite game didn't make it on the video, consider this. Maybe there are some games that deserve their own video. I usually like to address the audience in these ending bits. I'm trying a new editing software here, DaVinci Resolve. I've never really used it before. I've been on Hit Film. With growing pains trying to figure out a new software, but I think overall it's been going quite good. Sorry if it's really scuffed or boring, that's a skill issue. I've kind of been at a point in my life where I haven't really had the time or the desire or the means to make videos, and I guess going forward, to put it succinctly, I'm going to make videos when I feel like it, I suppose. Sometimes there's going to be a topic that captures my inspiration and I'll make videos then. So, in short, see you in another 2 years. Bye bye. Okay.